This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. In this episode, I speak with designer Radim Malinic about creating a brand book, color psychology, and the rule of the opposite. Enjoy this episode. Hey, it's James Taylor. I'm delighted today to have Radim Malinic. Radim is a creative director and designer living and working in London. He runs Brand New, which is a multidisciplinary award-winning studio, but before finding his calling in the creative industry, Checkball Malinic was an ice hockey player, a bassist in a death metal band, an indie DJ, music journalist, and student of economics and business management. After moving to the UK to explore the expansive music scene, he found an even greater interest in art and graphic design. Since then, his eclectic interests have seen him working with some of the biggest brands, companies and bands in the world. Clients have included Harry Potter, London Film Museum, Psycho, Sprite, WWF, and USAID, amongst many, many others. His latest book is called Book of Ideas. It's a #1 Amazon bestseller, which has helped novices and professionals across the world to find new ways of approaching their creative work. And it's my great pleasure to have Radim on the show today. So welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. What a lovely intro. Thank you.
So share with our listeners, what's going on in your world just now?
Oh, but potentially a headache. Headache from absolutely everything going on at the same time. But it's an exciting time because I've been doing this. I call it freelance career, but technically it's not a freelance career because I run this as a studio. Brand New is my studio, and I don't hop between agencies like some of my friends do. They kind of they pop to agencies in central London and do 3-4 months on a certain project. I've got a roster of my own clients, which I cherish, love, and look after them greatly. And everything's very, very different. My clients can be from all sorts of different industries, and that's kind of what keeps me really on my toes, doing things that don't always repeat themselves, and that's what kind of gives me very much a creative satisfaction. So
we had a Paul Jarvis, the designer from the west coast of the States, on recently on the show, and he was speaking about he actually spends quite a lot of time choosing his clients. And being quite discerning as to the kind of clients that he wants to work with and finding sure there's a good fit. So what's the general way that how do people find out about your work? How does that that initial process of deciding if you're the right fit for each other?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I'm deciding on my clients at the last point of contact. So every work comes to me. I'm very lucky that I've been promoting myself for the last 11, 12 years quite relentlessly, be it on design magazines, various websites, kind of just always trying to be producing the best work I can, or producing very honest work that kind of reaches people through various channels. So when people come to me, I have to believe in what they've got to offer. So for example, if it's a startup, if it's a product, if it's a service or a good cause, I have to believe in what they've got, so I can sort of mentally align myself with what they're thinking and what they've got to produce. And after that, I can actually see, if we like each other on a personal level, then I can say, all right, let's do this. And sometimes you can have the most fascinating people come your way and wave a lot of cash in the front of you, and sometimes you have to say them no, because it's I believe that, for example, like what I do with my clients, it's a very collaborative process. It's very much like a relationship, and you want to do it with the right people, because doing things for money with people you don't like, you're only going to dislike it, and the money's never going to be worth it. So I don't go out. I haven't got my dream client list like David Ogilvy had or other sort of big design agencies, because I just let things surprise me. I just let the world come and find me, because if people can align with my vision through the body of my work on my website or through my book, then they will know that this is, this shouldn't sound big-headed, but this is no ordinary design setup to be producing ordinary work. It's very much, I try to challenge everything that I do to make sure that we always strive to create better things. So that's my philosophy.
And in the book, you talk about this this differentiation between the specialist and the generalist. So, you know, it seems like most people start as kind of specialists or develop into specialists, but then you've taken this additional step, which few people can take, into begin the generalist. And I can hear people saying, well, I don't want to be a generalist because I want to get mastery over what I want to do. I want to develop, you know, being amazingly good at this one thing. So talk about your take on these two concepts of specialist v generalist.
It's very interesting because some people get very scared by being labeled a specialist, and some people get very scared by being labeled generalist because they feel equally limited. I, as you said in my intro, I've done interesting various different things in my teenage life and in my early 20s. And I was, as a musician, I wanted to be playing one certain genre of music, only up to the point where I realized that another genre of music is more fun to play, or I was trying to master my instrument. And then as a DJ, I was trying to be, again, like you get DJs who played a certain style of music for 25 years and they get famous for it, and that's what they do. But what I did, even in my early my late teenage years, is that I played 5 different nights upon 5 different genres on 5 different nights, because there was so much to explore, and I just couldn't let it go. I couldn't really find my little patch and go, right, I'm going to be playing house music, or I'm going to be playing drum and bass, and this is it, you know. It's like kind of subscribing to one style of cuisine and say, well, I can only cook Chinese. That's it. I will never cook anything else. And it's just like, how do you take one influence? How do you get really excited by, let's say, certain type of food or certain type of music or certain type of art or style of illustration? And how do you cross-pollinate with something else? How do you create something that is a bit more of something new? Like, how do you sort of set the scene and then flip it? How do you surprise people and kind of create something that it feels fresh, because originality is questionable. Everything's been done. But how do you create things that kind of challenge that status? So I kind of liken it in my book to a guy like a session musician, let's say session guitarist who plays the most fantastic solos. He's the best one in town. And he gets hired for 5 songs or 2 songs, or he just for a day or 3 days, whatever, how long. And that's it. That he comes in the studio and works with a producer. And when in their own mind, both of them are specialists, because the guy who plays the best solos and the best guitar riffs, of course, he can do it the best way he can. But the guy across the studio, the producer, he specializes in producing albums. But what his task list entails is 25 times bigger than the guitarist, because obviously he does more of the stuff. You know? And I'm sure I don't have to respell how a recording process works, but that's how I see it with my work. I purposely decided not to grow my studio into an agency because I wanted to be that producer. I wanted to be in charge and in touch with the work that's being created, because the more people that get into the creative food chain, the more noise you get, and then and things then kind of start feeling a little bit disjointed. And I just wanted to always, even though it's kind of sometimes against the amount of time that's available, sometimes it would be better if I had more people working with me on a daily basis. But I want to have that meaning of work. You know, when you have 12 people doing 12 tasks, they get 1/12 of that excitement and that enjoyment of creating something, rather than when you create all 12 tasks yourselves. Then you get a lot more satisfaction, and you want to do that again, from start to finish. And that's where I believe that the difference between generalist and specialist really lies, because a specialist would get hired in a creative industry for one particular task. Let's say it's a illustrator, children's book illustrator, or a front-end developer or something. And that's where their little sort of ring-fenced world starts and finish. And for me, it was always about discovering things. And this is my lifelong quest. I'm never happy, because there's so much more out there that we can know and bring to our work that challenge that status of specialist and bring you more into a sort of specialist, sort of more of a generalist producer role.
And one of the things you're known for is your use of color. You kind of you do many interesting things, but one of them is this the use of color. And I'm interested when you start working with a brand or a company or even an artist, a music artist as well. what do you see the role of color being? How do you start thinking about that?
I think it's just that I've been thinking about it for quite a long time, because it's not something that I have decided to set myself like, okay, I'm going to be known for the use of color. I think when I started working digitally in, let's say, Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, you can have any color at any click of a button. It's that easy, it's that exciting. And I remember right from the beginning of my career starting producing variants and just kind of exploring how one thing can look different in one color or another, and how much of an impact it's got. Like, I mean, there was no terms of like A/B testing or whatever, like how we've got now. Like we just test different newsletter headers and pictures and that sort of stuff. So I was very much excited, like how I can take color and make it, see what I can get out of it. Also see how I can project happiness there. I would like to perceive myself as a quite happy, jokey person. And I just wanted to kind of have my work to be of more jollier character. I don't know.
So how does that work then when you work with a client? I mean, I know you've got the incredible list of clients, but clients whose brand is not that, whose brand is maybe a darker brand, or
yes. I mean, the beginning was more sort of happy-go-lucky, whereas now, after years and years of kind of questioning the use of color, I've gone a lot more scientific, a lot more tailor-made about how I do this. And some clients, as you say, can come with a pre-made observation or pre-made plans of how they put their brand to be perceived. Some clients have got nothing. Some clients are another bunch of clients is very open to, what's the word? Not like liven up their brand, because they want to be aligned with everything else that's going on around there, like how exciting things are. And how many brands, when you can think of it, like, for example, the rebrand of Deliveroo or Just Eat. I mean, that's just two examples from the fast food industry or from the food industry. They are all of the brand sets, all of the branding sets are very multicolored. It's just the container of the brand is a shape. The rest, what's going around it, is just a sort of big muddle of beautiful energy that's portrayed to it, just to catch out attention. Because when you think of how much information we get bombarded with every day, it's a very much crazy, colorful world. Yeah. So in terms of color, I don't go willy-nilly about choices. I just want to make sure that for example, if there's a talent, if there's a power, if there's a business and stuff, it's you use the right colors associated with such sort of topics, because then you can expand on them. And it's the use of color now for me is less of an aesthetic part more than as a reasoning which I can stem from. So it's kind of put in a reason and say, okay, so for a strong established business, let's start with a red and see where we go. And with a talent business, let's start with a purple and see where we go, and just kind of grow from there, as opposed to just sort of throwing darts against a swatchboard and go, well, we just hit green, let's go with green.
and how cognizant of you when you're working with color? Because I know in the world of advertising, they're looking at things like color psychology, certain colors, certain types of yellows, which you often associate with more budget. Companies like Ryanair or certain brands that use there's certain type of yellow that tends to you see in maybe more on the budget end of products. And then you often see other colors, and I'm thinking like here, for example, like black, the blacks, and where they then kind of come forward with a more of a feeling of luxury. There's a slight kind of a classier element to them as well. So do you play with people's perception of color? So where they, maybe something that most people think of is one type of thing, and actually it's a little bit of a disconnect by using one color that they associate with one type of thing and putting it in a different context.
I do have something what I call the rule of the opposite, where I do try to create purposely. I think the opposites of cliches. So, for example, when you look at the Olympics London 2012 logo, that was every other color but the color of the Olympics ring. There was turquoise, it was pink, it was white. It was all sorts of things, and I like that disruptive element of what they did. When you, for example, mentioned Ryanair, it made me think of EasyJet, and they use orange. And the Nike boxes, like the Nike trainer boxes, they're all orange. And EasyJet is kind of EasyJet's orange is associated with budget. Like, okay, this is nice, cheap, and cheerful. Whereas in a Nike's way, it's the colors of ambition and success and achievement. So two almost equal colors can mean totally different reasons, and I think that's why we get leeway, like, because even though certain things are associated with certain reasonings and certain sort of answers, we can still always try to challenge them and kind of create things that are slightly weird, and different and unusual, because it's all about that sort of surprise.
So one of the challenges that often faces creatives if they're working in, let's say, design creatives working in agencies, for example, or maybe it's musicians who are having to work for more corporate clients and having to create maybe jingles and library music and things like that, is they're constantly having to create, and sometimes there's a danger of burnout there as well. So how do you ensure for your own kind of personal well-being that you continually can stay inspired? Where do you go for your ideas? How do you ensure that you avoid any kind of burnout with the work you do?
The best piece of advice I've ever had in my career was to take a day off. I used to be so married to my work that I would happily do, I happily used to do 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was just sort of glued to my screen. I was not always kind of crossing the time zones, because my clients were based around the world. So I would happily do, Monday morning, starting with the sort of 12 midnight with people in Sydney, then do London, then do Vancouver. And it's just, I'd be very, very happy doing that. But then, of course, I felt like crap after it. Like every 3 weeks, it would just collapse and just cry. Like literally, I would cry. It's just my body would just give up. And my girlfriend, now my wife, she just said once this, like, oh, don't you take a day off? And because I was in this sort of this vicious cycle, I was just like, what do you mean? Of course it's obvious to take a day off, but I do meetings on days off. And she's like, no, that still works. Just do something else. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then she bought me a dog, and I've been walking around just going into the woods and just expansive places, and just being as far as possibly from my screen and from my office as I can be, because then once you remove yourself from that noise of all of the machinery and gadgetry and internet, you can actually hear your thinking. You can actually see what you're thinking and what you can do, because it's that moment of clarity, just not being sort of bogged down and sort of just bombarded with all the emails and stuff. It's just kind of stepping away as far as I can from the noise. And I love the quote. Somebody said it that lions, when they sleep, they sleep. When they hunt, they hunt. And I just love that. I just love, because what most of us, I mean, how many times have you thought of booking a holiday whilst you were halfway through the project? And how many times we're thinking halfway through the holiday, we're like, I should be looking at some emails. I'm just like, we got it so wrong. It's like and I think when one of us masters like how we can not think about holidays halfway through the project and actually enjoy them and not be on our emails, even though we've set up all the autoresponders, then I think we'll be much, much happier people.
So can you talk about a time then when you working on a project, maybe you weren't necessarily doing those kind of 18-hour days, it doesn't have to be that, but you're working on something for a client and you gave it your heart and your soul, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out like you'd hoped. And what was the lessons that you took from that experience?
Oh, I've got how much time have we got? No, I mean, and I think this goes nicely back to the specialist and generalist, because I do not work at the bottom of the food chain anymore. I work with decision makers. I work with people who I can explain to them the vision. I can pre-sell the view of where we're going to go with this, because you can work for 36 hours non-stop awake, and you send something to somewhere in America and somebody replies to you 2 weeks later saying it's not right. I mean, like, what do you mean? Where did you go for 2 weeks? And I'm like, oh, I was on holiday. I'm like, why was I rushing doing this stuff? And he says, well, anyway, this is not right what you sent me. I'm like, well, I just did what you asked me. And it's just like it's almost like being on a first date and exchanging text messages and then being surprised that you've not known about each other's life story because you haven't spent enough time talking to each other. And it's very much the success to most of the projects, and I would say the majority is the lack of planning, like just sort of gung-ho approach because we get excited about, we got a chance to create something. And the thing is, I've got this system in place where I've scaled down the number of, scale down the ambition. I'm working with clients which are very much still of nice, intricate nature. There's so much to do, but I'm working with much smaller brands because we can do much better work. We can smash the expectations, and also we can understand each other from the get-go. So I'm the art director, I'm the designer, I'm the illustrator on a project, and a web designer or a web producer. I'm in charge of those tasks, and because I have been holding this client's hand right from the start, they know what to expect at every single point of delivery. They don't get surprised by going, "Ooh, what's this? We didn't want this." And that's literally learning from mistakes, because I've spent years and years just throwing pasta against the wall, and hoping that, but when you send that email, will they like it? Will they not? And it's literally 50-50 gamble.
So when you have that new client, that brand new client, that whether it's a technology, a brand, or it's a product, or something, you obviously have that ability then to create the brand, the actual visual representation of the brand as well. And so do you start working on we hear this expression like brand books as well, which is obviously talked about more in companies and design, but individuals tend to think less about and having a brand book, or musicians or bands don't really think about having a brand book so much. So when you first start working with that client, what are some of the key things that you look to kind of create first when you're building that initial brand?
Well, that's a very good point, because if somebody hasn't got a brand book, you made them understand that they need to have a point of reference, just that seed of a color, or that's something you just like Joey said in Friends, you need a television so furniture's pointing in one direction. And that's the thing, you need that telly in your life just to say okay, so this is what you stand for, this is your value, or this is your philosophy, and you can sort of build from there, because loads of people treat creativity as an open-end buffet. They just see everything. They want everything. Just think of how many plugins you can have for your WordPress website, or what you can have, how many apps you can have on your phone. And that's where people get muddled, because you don't really need everything. You just need the stuff that is good for you, the stuff that will make you happy rather than making you sick. So I've been working recently with clients as diverse as a dating agency or a meditation drop-in studio. I've been working with a florist from Chelsea. I've been working with doing some merchandise for WWF. Yeah, 007. It's been a
James
long day,
Bond.
Obviously. James Bond, yeah. Some work for Harry Potter, now the merchandise branch. And it's a mixture of everything. And it can seem quite daunting to think hey, how can you switch from thinking about dating company to meditation to a lemonade packaging? But it's that focus, just literally focusing, the lion focuses on hunting when he's hunting. It's just okay, and now I'm thinking lemonade. What would I do? What would I buy? What is the target demographic? And really just go with reasons, because design's got this beautiful power of giving you lots of answers to lots of questions, because it is out there. I mean, some people say, "Oh, do you go to galleries to get inspiration?" I was like, "No, I stand in the middle of the Oxford Street and I just watch people buying stuff, and I just look how we are behaving. What is it? What patterns we do? What we use, and what is it? Because that's primary. We create work for other people. I'm not an artist. I can't summarize a feeling or something in an abstract painting. I deliver things that make other people's basically fulfill other people's objectives. So it's out there. I mean, it's literally observing the pattern of life and okay, what can I do with it? And yeah, it's once you kind of start having the outline of the answer, it's then ask myself what is the best way I can deliver it? What's the best way I can make it? Again, I've mentioned that word before, but it's just how can I surprise people? How I can sort of redefine the stale mindset, how I can sort of change it, how I can challenge it, because it's possible. I mean, we can still create things they will make people stand back and think, wow, right, I want to do this, whatever that is. I want to have it at home, or I want to do this. I want to go to this meditation studio, because they try to do something which talks to people rather than just takes them for fools.
And so in the process of creating that brand book as well, it's interesting to see how giving that providing that focus sometimes can have quite a profound effect. I was walking around a really nice hotel the other day with the general manager of this hotel, and he talked to me about the brand DNA, is the way that he expressed it.
Yeah.
And he mentioned something, and it was a very small thing. It was a little visual motif. And he said, now, I want you to start looking around you. And we were walking around, from the reception all the way to a couple of different rooms in the restaurant. And as I started walking around, I started noticing that brand motif, like everywhere, in everything. And then when we sat down for lunch together, I noticed it in the menu as well. And then I also noticed, he said, well, and he explained a little bit about the more fully about the brand as well. Even very simple things like using the senses about. He said, we have a brand scent. You when you're going into our building and you go into our rooms, it has this scent, and that has been thought about because it goes back to the brand book. What do we want to say? What do we want that focus to be for people? How do we want to surprise people? And then, ensuring that when people leave the place, you give them little things which continually reinforce that brand over time. And it was the subtlety of it I found very, very, really interesting, and started to think about, well, as you start looking around with that eye, and I suppose this goes to like, and I'm not an artist, but people talk about an artist's eye. As I started looking around lots of different things, going to big rock gigs, like really amazingly produced rock gigs, and suddenly seeing, that they're taking that and they're replicating it in different places because there's a producer there who has that vision or is working with the artist to create that vision together, ensure that it goes in, is seeping into everything that brand's creating.
I would 100% agree. I went to see Jamiroquai at the Roundhouse on Friday, and I've been to Roundhouse so many times before, and I wouldn't say nobody owned the space like Jamiroquai did on Friday. It's just when the whole building was Jamiroquai at that moment, and that is something quite powerful. And yeah, the brand DNA is just it's playing to senses. I mean, you said it there. I mean, it's when you think of places like Abercrombie and Fitch, they're just pumping out their brand fragrance because it's a brand association, and when things smell better, we think of them as of better value. And there's been countless studies made when you show people the same pair of trainers in two different rooms, one which smells beautifully, and one that doesn't smell of anything, and people thought that the same pair of trainers were either £20 or £200. So it's just like we play into our senses, and I think our world is becoming so digitally focused that we are cutting out, the senses. Like I try to do with my work, and especially the reason why I still produce books is hard. We are hardwired to enjoy, everything with all of our senses. And when you put things just on the screen, or when you just have something to flash on your home screen or something, it's nowhere to be seen, and it goes so quickly. And every time I start working with a new client, I always use the analogy of I think of the AA group, where I believe they've got a coin in their pocket. The alcoholics have got a coin in their pocket, and if they feel like having a drink, they should pull out a coin and look at it, and just that will take them back to the room. That association, like, hey, it's okay.
It grounds them in that
it
place
grounds
again.
them, and yeah. So every logo, every new aspect of what work I'm creating. Even I had a conversation earlier today about a new brand, and we were talking about various sort of dimensions of stuff. And I said, well, it has to be as easy on the website as an icon as something that we can print in 3D. Because I want those people to have that logo on their desk, or I want it to be as a pin badge, or I want it just, it needs to be present in the exactly the same way as you said, like that. If you got that little sort of nice little a logo device sort of woven into everything where you are, it builds on the trust. You know where you are. You can trust it. You can feel it. You can touch it, and I think that just makes you want to come back more.
And it'll be interesting now. Obviously, we've come from a very 2D world with computers and laptops and mobile phones and things as well. But we're about to go into this next stage of augmented reality, virtual reality, haptic suits where you can actually feel, you can actually have sensations in binaural audio as well. So that brand is going to be represented in lots of different ways that people hadn't even thought of yet. And it's like, how, okay, if I'm in that haptic suits and I can feel, I can smell, and I can sense this, that brand has to relate to there as well. So I'm sure designers will be doing some very, very cool things in the future around that. You were mentioning a little bit there about kind of tools and the use of tools. Do you have any online resources or tools or apps that you love to use?
I try not to, if that makes sense. I try to use productivity apps. I've got this analogy that we use our phone like Mr. Bean used his phone in 1993, because there's this famous scene from The Blind Date when there's a video of him and he doesn't get the date, and she was like, it was a terrible date because he was snapping pictures of everything. And there's a cut to him and he says, well, I've got a photo of the meal. And that's what I feel like. We've got the most powerful like computers in our pockets, yet we just use it for entertainment. And I have started, and I'm not saying starting and finished, but I have started so many different projects on my phone, or I'll pick them up on my phone because it's in my pocket. I'm a guy. All I carry it's my debit card, my keys, and my phone on me all the time, and that is it. And I've recorded stuff in Uganda and I turned into a music project. I used the Adobe companion apps like Adobe Draw or like Adobe Illustrator just to make sketches. Like when I'm away from the screen and when I really don't want to forget something, I just use that real sort of like the memento, because of course I can have a pen and paper in my pocket, but I would need to have a pen or a pencil, and we know how easy that gets lost. And
with so many projects going on, you mentioned kind of productivity apps there as well. Are there any things to ensure, because you have all these different clients, they're in different time zones, you're having to share work as well? Is there any trusted place that you have?
I use Dropbox. I mean, that's just the simplest thing. I know Dropbox, and I'm sure there's better alternatives, but I just use that because I've had it from day dot. And it's integrated and it works really well, and it doesn't seem so foreign to people when a client who would you not think as computer literate asks you for your Dropbox account so they can send you stuff. It's on a good path already. There's a hope that things can go really well. But because some people I like helping people. I like making difference in their life, and if they're halfway on the right track, it's always helpful. But yeah, what I think one of the apps that I've liked the most all the time is the Visco Cam, which is no way productive. It's just a nice photo app, but it just felt like it was created by people for people. It was created for the one reason at heart, for taking better photography, and I think that would be my like all-time favorite app.
And if you could recommend just one record and one book to our listeners, what would they be?
Right, with the book's going to be quite easy, isn't it? I do have to recommend my book.
We're going to put a link there anyway, so you cannot recommend your own book. We're going to put a link to the book of ideas anyway. Okay, so what would be the other book?
Oh right, okay. It might be quite well. I think it's a 50-50. I would recommend God Hates Us All by Hank Moody from the TV series Californication. It's just because it's a really funny, silly book. It's really, really interesting.
There's actually a book that came from that, because I watched the TV series, but I didn't realize there was a book that came out.
That's exactly it. 99p purchase on Amazon, and it's a really good book. It's so good. So yeah, I can't. It's just a whole kind of inception cycle. Like, so who's Hank Moody? Who's this? Like, he plays him, and that book really exists. And is there really a movie? And apparently there is. And I picked it up the other day again, and it's just there's some beautiful, brilliant lines. And I just, the other split, the other 50-50 was going to be How We Decide by Jonah Lehner, which is a very much a heavy book about neuroscience and about the decisions that we make, which is kind of much more of a tie-in to what we were talking about earlier. In terms of an album,
And funny enough, Journalera, because obviously our show here is about creativity. He actually also wrote another really good book on creativity as well, which it came in for some criticism for a couple of different reasons, but it's actually a great book as well. So what I'll do is on the links here, I'll put in people with JamesTaylor.me and just look for Radim Malinic. You're going to find the links to God Hates Us All by Hank Moody and How We Decide by Jonah Lear as well. So what would the album be? I know this is difficult for you, being a musician, being a DJ. This is probably maybe a slightly more difficult one for you.
I think I will go back. I mean, literally 55 million albums, and I'm just flashing through my mind. It's so quick. It's hard to say, but I think for the current one, I would recommend the new John Mayer album. It's gonna come out in 3 weeks. He's been putting it out in EPs, and John Mayer is a fantastic example of someone, which actually John Atlanta explains, is with having a grit. Just keep going. Just keep going and just trying to make your best work all the time and forget on the criticism or whatever people think of you and be on that path. And I think John is just an amazing example of a musician who just lives and breathes his craft. And you can hear it in every single second of his music. So the new album is called The Search for Everything by John Mayer.
Great. And we'll put those down on the show notes as well. So final question for you. Let's imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and had to start from scratch. So you've got all the tools of your trade, all the knowledge that you've acquired over the years, but you have no contacts, no one knows who you are. You have to restart. What would you do? How would you restart?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So I know everything I know and I can do everything I can do. Is that right?
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Because normally the answer would be like, of course, I would do it all over again. But I think I would go somewhere, like if nobody knows me and I can go anywhere, I think I would go and just try to kind of take it on the road for a while and just maybe travel for a bit and just work with underprivileged people and just kind of maybe go and have a bit more impact on the world, because I've set up my business and I've got my family here and we've got a baby, and of course this is great, but you just feel like you've got a little bit less opportunity to travel and kind of go and be away for a while, and I don't really want to be away anymore. So it's like, yeah, when I work with charities like WWF or USAID and others, it's kind of, I try to do something remotely from here for people somewhere else, but it's quite mind-blowing when I went to, for example, a place like Uganda. I went to see the branding for a charity I did there, and I couldn't believe it because I've done it from my little studio here in London, and it just made a difference to people on another continent. So yeah, I think what I would do is just kind of just travel a little bit and help people a little bit more.
Wonderful. So what is the best way that listeners can connect with you, learn more about your work and what you create?
I think it's the best to point people to my website, which is brandnew.co.uk, brand, brandnu.co.uk. And there's links to all my channels, Instagram, Twitter. I'm trying to remember.
All the interwebs.
All the interwebs, all the entertainment channels. There's links to it. I was unlucky because I couldn't get brand_new for everything, so it's all a bit all over the place. So my website is the point of call because I own my traffic. There's everything that I want to show people and everything that I stand for. And there's some previews from the book and links to all the other things that I've done. So that's the best place to point people to.
Great. And the new book is called Book of Ideas. We'll have all this on the show notes. Well, Radim, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your creative journey with our listeners. And I wish you all the best with the creative work that you go on to do in the future.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.